Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Ravens Call. Again, I am your host, Tyler Cameron. If you haven't already or don't know what this podcast is going to consist of in the near future, you can go to my 1-minute intro video, or I'll explain it a little more right now. So, football is back, and I'm going to be talking about it every week, talking about the NFL, every game that I watched, as well as talking more prominently about the Ravens and their game and the analysis of it. I won't go too in depth with every NFL game, but that is also for you to decide. If you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, I want you to talk more about the Packers or the Steelers or whatever team there is, probably besides the Browns, I will make it apparent to talk more in depth about their game or what's going on with that team in the NFL news. This podcast will be available on Spotify and YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts. You can find links to all those in all of my different streaming services, or you can look up my Instagram, The Ravens Call Podcast. On that note, hoping everyone is having a great day and ready to listen to some exciting NFL and Baltimore Ravens news. All right, let's get down to business. I'm going to skip over the Thursday night game because I'll talk more about that in the Ravens segment of the podcast. So we'll just skip over to Friday night. So Friday night game was in Brazil, which going into that game was very interesting to hear that a lot of players did not want to go to Brazil, especially when you're wearing green. It's not the best to be wearing green there. But the game was very exciting. I thought that at the start, the Packers just looked very dominant. Their defense was clicking. Jalen Hurts did not look like a great quarterback at the start. Jordan Love did. But the Eagles turned it around, and Saquon Barkley made his presence known on that team. And I'm pretty sure the Giants are just beating themselves up right now because they did not want to see that for them. And so, with that being said, I mean, the Eagles won the game 34-29. Saquon Barkley had 109 yards rushing. A good amount of passing yards. Jordan Reed for the Green Bay had 4 receptions for 138 yards and a touchdown. So, and Saquon scored 3 touchdowns. So it was a good game for Saquon. Jalen Hurts needs to play a little better. He started playing better in the end. But the end of the game is where a lot of things for Packers fans was very scary, was when Jordan Love went down. And it looked like his knee popped. And me being a guy who's torn my ACL before, it's always scary when your knee pops because it normally is never a good sign. But for him, at least it was an MCL sprain. Yes, he's out 3 to 6 weeks. But again, Packers fans, it could have been a lot worse. He could have really hurt himself and been out for the season after he just signs this big old contract, So, but it was a very good game. A very good way to start out. The first 2 games were top notch, I would say. All right, and now we're going to go down to Sunday's game. So I'm just going to kind of go through and talk about every game little by little, what I saw, just to kind of give you guys a brief rundown of how the game was. Okay, the Steelers and Falcons game was a bore fest. Sorry, Steelers Nation and Falcons Nation, but the Steelers defense carried them through the game. Fields played decently here and there, so did some of the offense, but their offense just looked so sluggish. They kicked field goals. They kicked 6 field goals, and that's how they won the game. Falcons scored a touchdown and then just hung a donut up in the second half, and that's partially due to the Steelers' great defense. More importantly, the big man being TJ Watt. Patrick Queen played terribly, which I kind of figured because he's not a number one guy. He's a good number two. But when you got T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith um, on the end going against the quarterback, it's always doomed for that quarterback, and they caused a lot of ill-timed throws because they scared Kirk Cousins into making some throws he shouldn't have, and it cost them the game. So that is how that went for the Steelers. So the Steelers are the only 1-0 team in the AFC North, which, it's not really surprising. Actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. It is surprising for one other team that they're not 1-0, which I'll get to in a little bit. That was a game that I'm going to have some fun with. All right, next up on our list is the Bills and Cardinals game. So the Bills won 34-28. The Cardinals were playing excellent. They're playing excellent in the first half. I did not think the Bills looked very good. And then they stepped up the second half, started getting their feeling. Josh Allen went crazy, throwing 2 TDs and running for 2 others. So, he's still dominant. I didn't think he would do too well in the new system, but I knew his rushing attack and he could get passes there. He just doesn't have as dominant of receivers, but Coleman played a good game for them. They had a good run game with Cook. So they played pretty decent, but the defense halted the Cardinals because the Cardinals, they were scoring at will in that first half, and then they kind of slowed down. There was some good stuff from the Cardinals with their run game and Kyle Murray, but the big thing that everyone's been talking about too is Marvin Harrison Jr., their rookie, had 1 reception for 4 yards. Every other rookie had a pretty good performance. And that just happens. It's not like you're going to come out and be a stud right off the bat. No one out of the rookies had a stud game coming out that I saw. So, but yeah, the Bills look good, and the Bills will play this Thursday against the Dolphins. So that will be a very good game to talk about. All right, up next, we got the Titans and Bears game. And I laugh about this one because this was one of those games where this was one of two, I guess to say, where the Bears and the Steelers, their offense didn't score, really. And what I mean by that is the Bears' touchdowns were all defensive. The Steelers' defense got them in position, but they only kicked field goals. They never touched the end zone, which was crazy. But for the Bears and Titans game, the Titans looked really good start first half, and the Bears looked terrible. Caleb Williams had a rough debut. He didn't look good with throwing the ball. You have all the weapons in the world. You should be able to do something. So his knock is a lot higher than what I will be on other rookie quarterbacks because you do have all these weapons and you were playing a mediocre team in the Titans. For the Titans, they led it passing, rushing, and receptions, obviously, because Caleb Williams played terribly. Will Levis played good at the start, and then he cost them the game in the end. Pollard played really well. Calvin Ridley had 3 receptions for 50 yards. So they didn't pass as much. Their offense didn't. They were able to just get down the field because of costly mistakes by the Bears, but they won. So, but it was a shit show for the Bears. Their defense really stepped up, and their defense is one to watch. On to the next game, which this is the one where I'm going to have the most fun. And it is the Patriots and Bengals game. Now, my dad is a Patriots fan. He knows going into the season, they are not going to be very good. They're not going to win many games. I'm thinking to myself, Joe Burrow's back. You got Jamar Chase playing. I knew he was going to play. And you're facing Jacoby Brissett. Like, there's no way that Cincinnati loses to the Patriots. They should go 1-0 with the Steelers. I figured the Browns would lose. For us, our game was a little flawed, but I was shocked. And what I mean by that is the Patriots won 16-10. The Bengals did not score in the first half. They scored a touchdown in the third and a field goal in the fourth. For the guys that are known for their offense and not known for their defense at all, that was concerning. I get it. First game. I don't think that this is like how their season is going to go. Obviously, I think they're going to pick it back up. They take a little while to get into the season, but it's against the Patriots. It's not like you were facing some tough team that's like top of their game. You were facing the bottom of the barrel team and you lost very easily, I might add. Joe Burrow threw for 164 yards. Jamar Chase had 6 receptions for 62 yards. Stevenson did really well with 120 yards for New England and a touchdown. So there was no domination. It just seemed like the Bengals thought this was going to be an easy win and we're just coasting. And they're like, oh, we're still always in it. And they weren't. I was watching that game. I'm expecting them to come back. I was expecting them to win, like, no problem. Like, woohoo, it's a close game, but yeah, they still win. And for them to go and lose this game really hurts them because you can't lose the easy games when you have the schedule against the AFC North the way you do. The AFC North, you've got to beat teams that are easy cake matchups. Like next week for the Ravens, we're playing the Raiders. If we don't win that game, it's going to be a really bad season because you're playing the Raiders team that, yeah, they have a decent defense, but they have a shit offense that we can exploit. So we should win that game, and the Bengals should have easily won this game. Even, I don't care week 1 or not, you should easily beat the Patriots. There's no Bill Belichick. This is a new team, their new coaching system. You should beat them. So no exceptions on that, especially when everyone's talking about, the revenge tour and the Bengals are back, all that kind of stuff. So, and you can say, well, T. Higgins was out. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't see Lamar having Jamar Chase and Higgins. If we had any of those players, yeah, we would have killed the Chiefs because we have better receivers. Because, I'll digress because we're going to talk about that later. But, Bateman really doesn't help our team anymore right now. So after week 1. So the best game, I think, to watch on Sunday morning was the Texans and the Colts. Now, this game was amazing. It was back and forth. Teams were playing really well. Anthony Richardson looked really good. CJ Stroud looked really good. Mixon and Diggs. I'd say Mixon played well. Diggs had 2 touchdowns, but he really didn't do much in the receiving department. He just caught the 2 touchdowns. Nico Collins did well. Jonathan Taylor did pretty decent. And then, shockingly enough, not Pittman, but Pierce for the Colts had 3 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. So this game went down to 29-27. Very close game. I was shocked by because it was already a classic week 1. That's all I can say about that. All right, next up on the list was the Dolphins-Jaguars game. Honestly, the Jaguars had this game in the bag. All they had to do was coast, kick some field goals, and they would have easily won this game. ETN had a lot of fumbles that cost them a lot of points. So I think that he's kicking himself right now because this was an easy win. Tua Tagovailoa had 338 yards for a touchdown. Granted, I mean, most of those came off just chucking it downfield plays. Tyreek Hill had 7 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. Even after he had that incident with the police in the morning, which, it's very scary to see. I mean, you hear about it all the time, and obviously it just becomes a such bigger topic when it's a famous person or a famous player. And watching that body cam footage, it was terrible. You don't. There was no need to use that big of excessive force, and especially why there's so many cops right there. So, and then they arrested Calais Campbell, which, if you guys don't know, Calais Campbell is a big dude and tall dude. To where, yeah, I can see why you'd be threatened by him, but that was very unacceptable. And so I hope that justice is served. I hope Tyreek Hill is okay, both physically and mentally. He was able to play in the game, played well, but I'm hoping that it didn't take too much of a toll on him, and I'm hope that there's subject to change on that. The Jaguars, actually, their best rusher was Bigsby with 12 carries, 73 yards, which is very interesting to see. But Jaguars, again, a lot of these teams had great first halves and then did nothing in the second half, and they lost. Which that's what they did. They were up 17-7 at half. All they kind of had to do was kick some field goals, and they would have won. But they just played abysmal. So the Dolphins are 1-0. Bills are 1-0, so that's going to be a good Thursday night matchup. These next three games were very ones you didn't really need to watch too much. The Saints obviously just dismantled the Panthers. The Panthers played terrible, but is that really shocking? They're expecting a better second year. You didn't give him weapons. You didn't give him much to go off of. So what do you expect? Saints came out and balled it up, which that's not shocking as well. Derek Carr, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kamara, 15 carries, 83 yards and a touchdown. Caught some balls too. Final score was 47-10. 47-10. So, yeah, it was a pretty big blowout. Also, I don't know if I said this, but the Dolphins game was 17-20. So they barely won on that. But the Saints just demolished the Panthers, which rightfully so. Everyone's going to demolish the Panthers this year. If you have a defense that is playing against the Panthers that's semi-decent, I would put those guys in on your fantasy. The shocker of it all was the Vikings-Giants. Yes, it was a blowout, but the more shocking thing was Sam Darnold played really well. When he played for the Jets, he was pretty terrible at playing against the Giants at that stadium, at MetLife Stadium. He just never had a good performance, but this time he did. He threw 208, 2 touchdowns. And Aaron Jones, new team, played really well. 14 carries, 94 yards and a touchdown. They won 28-6. And Daniel Jones is one of those meme guys that you just kind of laugh at because he has no help. He's not that good of a quarterback, and he's just washed. I'm glad he stayed at the Giants and not gone to another team because, at the time, I think there was a report saying that we would have wanted Daniel Jones if Lamar didn't sign. And I knew going in, that is a terrible decision. He is not a good quarterback. I would rather waste our 2 first-round draft picks to sign like Herbert or something like that. I'd rather waste 2 years of the future to get Herbert than to settle on a guy and you think he's the one. It doesn't matter if he went to any other team. He's terrible. He has zero read of the defense. So, yeah, the Giants scored 6 points. They had 2 field goals. One of the Vikings touchdowns was a pick straight to him that he just walked into the end zone, which was typical Daniel Jones. And the Giants fans didn't even like him. They booed him after the game, which isn't too shocking on that. Going into the next game was the Chargers-Raiders. This game was kind of a shit show, in all honesty. Towards the end, they had a couple big runs by J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins was probably the big guy in this case. 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown, which he had a couple big runs. Gardner Minshew did not play really well. Score was 22-10. A lot of field goals, and then big touchdown. So a touchdown for each team, but that was about it. The offense looked semi-decent, but they just couldn't get the ball moving. It's tough when you lose Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, two big pieces. But their defense really stepped up and played well. On to the afternoon games. We had the Broncos and Seahawks. Bo Nix didn't play the best, obviously. I mean, the Seahawks have a really good defense. Their head coach is defensive-minded. I mean, he was the Ravens' defense coordinator last year. So I was kind of going into this game knowing that, hey, Denver's probably going to lose this game. But towards the end, he made a drive at the end. And if they would have stopped the Seahawks, he would have had a chance to win it. But the score was 26-20. Seahawks gave up two safeties, which doesn't really happen very much. Almost a third, but the Seahawks hung on to win this game. Geno Smith played semi-decent, 171 yards, touchdown and a pick. Walker, the running back for the Seahawks, played really well, 20 carries, 103 yards and a touchdown. Metcalf kind of did not have the best game because, Surtain was on him, but Lockett did, 6 receptions, 77 yards, and a fantastic catch at the end that sealed the game. But for Bo Nix, yeah, he threw 2 picks. He looked a little wild on some of his throws. Him just being antsy, him just trying to read. Because when you're starting out, you can't expect a guy to do that great going on. But he had some plays here and there, but just he couldn't muster anything. I mean, his first game, give it to him. But that fourth quarter drive was really good. He was able to find his guys, get the open receptions, and then run it in for touchdowns. So that's where I see the glimmer of hope, and I think that I give him more credit than Caleb Williams because he actually put his team in a position to score a touchdown, and he actually did get a touchdown, against a tough Seahawks defense versus the Titans. You could have just ran the ball every time we got a touchdown. Next afternoon game was the Cowboys and Browns, which I loved watching this game as a Ravens fan because watching Deshaun Watson play so terribly was amazing to me. Knowing that they gave everything up to Houston made Houston a contending team just to get a mediocre quarterback. All the news I wanted to hear. And then after the game, he finds out he's got new cases against him, different times of sexual assault and battery, which, I mean, not shocking from him. I don't like Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's a good man. I think he's just in this for money because now that he has a huge contract, he can go settle these cases, go settle and pay them their money. And, it doesn't hurt your reputation, right? Well, the tough part was that they lost, and they lost bad because Amari Cooper didn't play well. Njoku got injured. Ford didn't do that, just looked terrible. Dallas looked really good against a good defense. 33-17 was the score. It wasn't really that close. I mean, they scored a couple touchdowns in the second half, but it was kind of it was over at that point. But it was nice to see, and Dak got a new contract, rightfully so. Lamb's getting a new contract, they deserve to have these contracts, and they played well. They didn't have the stat performances that they did, but they looked good. The Browns are a good defense, so it's tough to score against them, but to put up 33 was really good. Next up, on the last afternoon game was the Buccaneers-Commanders. Buccaneers won 37-20. Baker balled out, which it's funny that I bring up the Browns and then Baker right after playing really well. I am so happy for Baker. Baker's one of those guys I want to, for him to succeed because the Browns put him in a shit position. If you were a Browns quarterback getting drafted to the Browns as a quarterback, yeah, that's where your career died. Most did. Actually, all of them did, really. Baker just revived somewhere else. and he finally found a spot in Tampa, and he balled out 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, he played pretty decent. I mean, it's got the jitters and stuff, but man, he ran the ball. I mean, he's the rushing leader with 16 carries, 88 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Guess he's going to be, a run first quarterback. Godwin had 8 receptions, 83 yards, and touchdown. Mike Evans had 2 TDs. Like, Baker balled out. Happy for him. Hope the best for him in the future. Now, the Sunday night game, the one that everyone was watching was the Rams and Lions. This went into overtime, and the Lions won because they scored a touchdown. The score was 26-20 because they scored that touchdown. But, Stafford, 317 on yards, touchdown interception. Detroit and the Rams were kind of going back and forth. This was a tough game. But the Lions pulled through at the end, and they got the toss, and they kind of knew the Rams defense was hit or miss. But both teams played really well. I could definitely see this being another playoff matchup again, but we'll see. Now for Monday night's game, the last game was 49ers and Jets. 49ers just killed them without CMC. They called upon Jordan Mason, and he had 28 carries, 147 yards, and a TD. That was amazing. He killed it. The kicking game actually worked out for them. I'm sorry if anyone had to go against Moody. I had Moody in one of my leagues that really helped me win. Also, I'm sorry for the people that had CMC and didn't know because, I won 2 of my leagues because CMC didn't play. But Aaron Rodgers, got to shake off the rust a little bit. Purdy played decent. Debo played really well as well. So this game was I knew this game was kind of be like this, but it was a good game from them. Now, on to the Baltimore Ravens. All right, let's get into the Baltimore Ravens game. Obviously, we know the Ravens lost. They didn't play their best. Honestly, they just really didn't. The one thing that really pissed me off was the penalties, the illegal formations. I did not see one illegal formation called. Did not see one called in any other game, but we had at least 4 or 5 that cost us, I don't know, about 70, 80 yards because we had good plays during those times. Penalties, we had 7, 64 yards. Kansas City had 6 for 45. It did seem like there was a lot more leaning against the Chiefs like normal, but we didn't play good. I'll give you that. We did not play good. I did not think that we had a shot to win. But there was a lot of times where we could have had a field goal. We could have had a touchdown. And it would get called back or pushed back because we would get these little penalties here and there that, like Ronnie Stanley said, I think they were just trying to make an example out of me. I didn't see one on Friday. I didn't see any on Sunday or Monday. Why did it have to happen against the Ravens? But Kansas City guys going false start every time. That's never called. And then you have the defensive coordinator calling a timeout. That's a flag. They don't call that. That was really the defining moment to show you there is favoritism towards the team. They can make up any excuse they want. They can. But you can't show that. Patriots, there was favoritism, but there was no favoritism with the refs. They earned their wins, rightfully so. They played some tough teams and they squeaked it out. Now, the Chiefs did not play the best either, but that was the best that they were going to get. They were full health. They had the same team back, like nothing really new. And yet we could have scored at the end. Yes, there's the toe incident with Isaiah Likely. We missed Flowers and we missed Likely on the play before. It happens. We're still getting used to our play styles. We got Derrick Henry. He's still getting used to what he's doing. Bateman's taken on a bigger role. Mark Andrews is still recovering and coming back from stuff. We have a new offensive line. We have a couple new defensive pieces. We're still learning versus Kansas City is fully mature. I 100% agree with Likely of that's the best that Kansas City is going to get. Yeah, they didn't have Brown in, which, okay, I've seen Brown. We had Brown. Nothing special. Rashid Rice played really well. 7 receptions, 103 yards. He was killer for them. Worthy, he didn't do much. He's a speedster, but he's not a receiver. He's more like the guy you will get on a jet sweep type of scenario. But I think going forward, we'll figure it out. I'm excited to see what happens at that point. I think Lamar played well. Everyone keeps talking about Lamar's numbers and, oh my gosh, Lamar needs to play better for his team. He did. Justice Hill, 6 receptions. Zay Flowers, 6 receptions. Isaiah Likely had 9 for 111 yards. Mark Andrews just didn't play well. Bateman had 2 receptions for 53 yards. You have to have receivers that you can go to on a daily basis, and we don't have that. We have a dual threat tight ends in Mark Andrews and Likely. And Mark is still coming back from, injury to where he's trying to get back to his original self. Derrick Henry, we're trying to find ways to do that. Our offensive line is still a work in progress, work on. So I definitely think that, we can play really well going forward. We do have the Raiders next week, which I think that I'm hoping we take good care of. I'm hoping we have a bounce back. But back to Lamar's numbers. 26 of 41, 273 yards, and a touchdown. He got sacked once for 6 yards. He lost a fumble. Yeah, and they only got a field goal out of it. So, and then he had 16 carries for 122 yards. He did everything he freaking could to help us win. So, when your guy, as a team we had 452 yards. Lamar had 395 of them. I don't like how they're blaming Lamar. I think we need to be putting more weapons with Zay Flowers because everyone's pinning it on Zay. Bateman needs to show up. You did not win your matchup, and you had an easy one at that. You need to be better because Zay Flowers cannot be the only option out of the receiving core. Nelson Aguilar, 1 reception, 6 yards. We need guys that can beat their defenders. If not, I have no problem trade his ass. Because we are in a win now scenario for the next 2 or 3 years if we can keep some guys. You can beat the Chiefs if you have that because they have McDuffie who's gonna do really well, but McDuffie got burned a lot of Flowers. So, and Jalen Watson, yeah, he played decent, but you're playing against Bateman. It's not like you were playing against a tough receiver. Like we put Mark Andrews against you, you toast. We just haven't found the rhythm of, okay, what run plays work, what receiving core works, what can we improve on? And this was a couple first games for a lot of tackles, guards, and stuff like that. And we only had 1 sack. Yeah, we probably had a good amount of pressures, but still. You know, our defense did not look its best. I'll give it that. It didn't look its best. We still had 2 sacks, um, a lot of QB hits, but we we did manage the game on that. Roquan Smith got an interception. So I don't really think. I mean, Travis Kelce 3 receptions, 34 yards. Isaiah Pacheco 15 carries, 45 yards. I know Patrick Mahomes threw for 291, but he had an interception and he didn't play his best either. We limited their best guys. We just need to do it on the offensive end and force them to play from behind. Because when they're leading, it's very easy for them to coast. It's very easy for them. Because, they laid it up. Rashid Weiss was the only guy that had over 50 yards. All the rest of them were here and there, hit or miss, So we just have to play better collectively. This is not us at our peak. We haven't even gotten close to that. We're still adjusting. We lost by 7, almost to the point to where if he catches that, we were going for 2, so it was we were either gonna win or lose by 1. So they get the announcers and the commentators like Stephen A. Smith, all those guys. You can talk all you want. It's week 1, baby. It's week 1. We played a tough Kansas City team that's been together for a while. We're still learning our running backs, our receivers, our tackles, our defense. We have a new defensive coordinator. So, and these may sound like excuses. No, Kansas City, I'm going to say it now. Kansas City deserved to win that game. They did. They played a lot better than us at the end, and then we were struggling to come back. But we almost came back. So I give my team props for almost having a chance to win it. That's it. But come playoff time, we need to be more prepared. We're going into play the Raiders. I think that that's a team that, they have a good defense. So we'll get a good see of our offense at that point. We'll see how Derrick Henry does on the running attack. But our defense needs to lock up Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. There is no excuse. How they played against the Chargers and they couldn't do that. So, yeah, come prepared for next week. So I'm very excited for what goes down in that. Other than that, I'm excited for next week. Let's go and look at next week's games. All right, we got a Thursday night game, Bills and Dolphins. That's a tough one. I still think the Dolphins are going to come out. It's at Miami. I still think the Dolphins are going to come out and win that just because they do have a pretty good team. They're going to play a lot better than they did this last upcoming week. Saints, Cowboys, Buccaneers, Lions could be a good game. Colts, Packers will be tough because of Jordan Love being out. Jets, Titans, 49ers, Vikings will be pretty easy. Seahawks, Patriots, Giants, and Commanders. I think that that'll be a good game for Daniels, the rookie, to see because I think that could be a game where he can win. Chargers, Panthers, Browns, and Jaguars will also be a good game. After Sean Watson threw 2 picks, I think that the Jaguars will win that game, in my opinion. We got the Raiders and Ravens. Ravens are favored by 9.5. Damn. Well, we'll see. Got to earn it. Rams, Cardinals, another good game. Steelers, Broncos. I think that that's going to be an interesting game just to see if Bo Nix can come back and see if the Steelers, who they have, because I want to see Broncos play Russell Wilson. I think it's a revenge game. But I don't think he's going to play, and he's pretty much just giving Fields the job at this point. So the afternoon game, we have Bills. We have Bengals, Chiefs, which will be maybe a tough game. That's weird for me because it's like I was expecting this to be a good game, and after the Bengals start, I'm like, I don't know. And then the night game is the Bears and Texans, which I think that the Texans will take care of business. Their defense got a little better. Bears are still figuring out their offense with Caleb Williams, and it's not any easier against the Strouds, as they're called. Monday night's game will also be a fun one with the Falcons and Eagles. I still think the Eagles are going to come out on top with that. They just seem very dominant, but we'll see how that goes. Excited for week 2. I'll be coming to you most likely on Tuesdays and Wednesdays with a video just before we hit that next week on that Thursday night game, so that I can kind of give you a breakdown of every game that went on, how the Ravens did, what needs to improve for the next week, and we'll go from there. So I think week 1 has been concluded. We have so many more weeks to go, 17 more weeks, and then we got the playoffs. So very excited to see what goes on, but very exciting stuff going forward. So as the clock winds down on another riveting episode, I want to thank you all for listening. Again, I know I normally don't have a schedule and it has been a while. That was mainly just because I was trying to get ready for the season, get more prepared, get a schedule in place. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays will be when the podcast normally goes on. Remember, my podcast will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you prefer. Feel free to comment or ask a question, or if you want me to talk about a specific topic or specific team, let me know. I'll shout you out and we can talk about it on the podcast. Also, all music and sound is provided by my brother-in-law, Justin. So thank you, Justin, for that. Well, Ravens Nation, thanks for joining me on this episode. Until next time, stay fierce, stay loyal, and keep rooting for that purple and black. I will see you next time on The Ravens Call.